So I want to start this budget priorities talk by painting a little bit of a picture. So some of you who were here last week, 2 weeks ago, what is time, heard Tamira's pledge kind of testament story, where she talked about how she's the executive director of an organization that hosts our area's largest support groups for trans and non-binary folks. And when she shared the story, she made it sound like it was this simple, like, I said, yes, the space is available, and then magically it happened, and it was just me doing everything. And I would like to just give you a glimpse into the reality and how much work such a small but important act of solidarity takes, because I believe that the moments ahead are going to be calling us to be working with more folks and providing safe space and also accompaniment to more folks. So both inviting folks in here, but also going out into the community and deepening those relationships. And those things, in fact, take a lot of volunteer and staff time and energy. So, painting a picture. When Tamira said there were a lot of emails exchanged to find dates and times that worked, our fabulous director of congregational life, Karen Armstrong, was in fact the person who was emailing Tamira, not me. So Karen connected with Tamira and they got together about the needs, both space and time and support-wise, of the group. So our director of congregational life was serving as the point person to get this arranged. She then communicated with Libby, our communication specialist, who does all of our scheduling. Now, Libby looked at our space and said, wow, we have a lot going on, and then talked to Angelica Pite, who is one of our lay ministry associates and a specialist with Alzheimer's and dementia. And she talked to Angelica and said, hey, Angelica, we need this larger Emerson Thoreau room. Can you and your people fit in the library? And Angelica said, yes, we can fit in the library. And actually, for accessibility reasons, the library being closer is actually maybe not a bad thing. So Angelica, lay ministry associate, moved her group to the library. Libby did all the technical stuff to make that happen and set up these trans non-binary support groups in Emerson and Thoreau room. Consulted with them about, do you want these events to be public on our website or not? And they said, public for now, but let's stay in touch and change that if needed. So Karen and Tamira have monthly check-ins to see how things are going and if anything needs to change. Our director of religious education hosted a transgender inclusion in congregation I think it was a 6 to 8 week sessions. And how many of 8 to a dozen people were a part of this? 10 of you all, perfect. And I was right in the middle. Came because we are committed to being excellent hosts and also recognizing that we already have trans and non-binary folks amidst our midst, and we want to be doing a good job of having everyone be fully in our community. So that's a whole nother team of work working on this other area of inclusion. Now, I didn't name our director of religious education, Pam Lepley, who led these workshops as well in the evenings, and also I think cooked for them so that folks who were coming would have food, because we have people who love to cook. All right, back to our director of congregational life, Karen Armstrong, who, in addition to arranging some logistics, asked Tamira, what does your group need to feel safe and good in this space? And how can we make sure that folks know that they're welcome here? So they organized a team of lay leaders who are on hospitality for these support groups. I think some of you are actually in the room. So every time we have a trans and non-binary support group, we have a lay leader who comes in 15 minutes before the group starts, a half an hour before the group starts. Half an hour before the group starts to be by the door, to welcome anyone who's coming in, to make sure that they know where to go, because these groups are getting more people in them too, right? So it's not like the same folks are coming back into them. They stand by the door and make sure people are welcome, also, are just aware of the surroundings, and then they stay for 15 minutes after the group leaves, lock the door, exit, make sure that everyone's doing well. Our Safe Congregations team is, as always, working and doing our best to have our space be both safe and welcoming for all people. So that's a whole lot of lay leaders and also a whole lot of staff and staff time and energy that's put into doing a thing well, because we're committed to doing what we do as best as we can. And I think that's a perfect illustration of the kind of connectivity is the word that's in my head, but it's not the right word. Collaboration. I'm dyslexic. I think you all know this kind of collaboration that our staff team and our lay leaders do together to ensure that we are providing the ministry and the space that are needed for this time. So I paint that picture because if we continue to do this slow, hard, but incredibly fulfilling work of building relationship, trust, and power, we're going to be called upon again and in similar ways, right? To work with folks, to be sure that folks are safe, that people have the space they're needing, and that we're able to be building a more just world together. I think we all want to say yes whenever we're asked to those things. And I want to be able to say yes, and I want us to be able to show up and do this well. And the reality is, to say yes and to do these things well, it just takes a lot of support, right? It takes a lot of staff time and energy, and I need us to continue paying our staff well and giving them appropriate raises so that we are able to continue provide the space that we have. So, as was the case last year, the big budget priority this year, and the thing that's always the biggest line item in our budget, is in fact staffing and staff time and payment. We talked last year about how the staff who have been more recently hired, so myself, our director of congregational life, were brought in kind of in that UUA fair share range, but some of our longer term staff need to get up there. So the folks who are most under their fair share range are our director of congregational life and our director of religious education. So this year, as we did last year, we'd like to give them a couple $2,000 to $3,000 raise so that they can be moving closer into the midpoint of that fair share range. We're not there yet, but we're committed to wanting to get there closer. We also would really like to hire a director level administrator. So the reality of a congregation as big as this is that there's a lot to manage, right? And right now, I'm doing an excellent job managing all of the programming and the ministries so that we're aligned and collaborating. And there's some logistical stuff that just needs someone who has that skill set to be doing. So having a director level administrator will allow our finances and all of the technical things that not my strength, right? Having a director level administrator will enable that all of that is running smoothly because we'll be able to pay someone at a level that they can manage all of these logistics. They can be working well with our buildings and our grounds and our safe congregations team and our finance team to make sure everything is going well. Does that make sense? Okay. We have some smaller increases in budget line items. Most of you all who are leading teams were flat for me. We're doing okay. But we do have some new programming with new and more groups forming. I think we have more small groups this year. We have I could read you a list, but now I'm trying to think off the top of my head. We have a new recovery group that might be forming. We have additional small groups. We have a new LGBTQ group. And all of these groups need some, just little budget line items for a food and a kickoff event. And maybe some better things at Pride, things like that. Some, maybe not a float, but we want to show up a little more proudly at Pride. The other bigger program expense changes are some more money for marketing and communications. And I want to be really clear about this, that we're not wanting to get our word out just to get our word out, but I think we've seen in recent months that there are actually a lot of people who are in need of what we're doing here. And we don't want to be hiding that under a bushel, right? And we want to make sure that folks who are needing this space can come here, can find a safe space, and also can find a place where they can connect with others and we can do more good and justice and beauty out in the world together. The other final thing, which I did not think of, but thank you, Karen, our Director of Congregational Life, our 75-year anniversary is, I believe, there's a little bit debate about this. It's if we count it as 1961, that's next year. If we count it as 1962, 51, I'm sorry, yeah, thank you, 1951. See, another reason, we need a director level administrator, folks. But our, like this fellowship, yes, but the newspaper was printed in 1951. And some people would be like, well, we weren't really incorporated until 52, right? Is that kind of a debate that's live or not really? That's, yes, okay, anyways, if we count it as 1951, then our 75-year anniversary is next year, and we should probably like have a party, right? So yes. Okay, so we need a couple $1,000 so we can like have a good party and maybe bring in a speaker. So those are the new program kind of expenses and line items. None of those are very large. Major budget increases are for these staffing things that I talked about up top. I now want to open it up for some questions and conversation, and I think someone has a mic. Is this the mic, Jack? Jack has the mic. And we'll also remember to see if folks on Zoom have any questions as well. Questions? I was about to say, the first time Unitarian Universalists were ever stunned to silence. You're so excited. You're going to go pledge like your heart's on fire. Okay, Megan.
What kind of priority is there for some outside work, like reaching out into the community?
Yes, so a couple of things. We have, last year, one of our bigger program budget shifts was that we created a partner organization line item so that we were giving money to some of our partner organizations. So those have actually stayed stable. Our social action committee continues to be funded fairly well. And we also, a thing that we've not been utilizing, but just you wait, there's going to be more conversation about this next year, is that we actually have a fund balance that you actually might remember the name of more than I do. That's about support for diversity, inclusion training, because some of what we find when we go out into the community is that we feel a little tentative and maybe we're not sure how to act right or do right or be right, and some of our folks might want to be getting some anti-racism, anti-oppression training. So we already do have that in a fund balance. But essentially, the getting out into the community doesn't necessarily cost a ton more program money, but it does take more staff time and staff support. So part of also having a director level administrator is some of the stuff that I'm, if in all honesty, a little less good at, right? A director level administrator can do, and I can be a little more involved in helping us build relationship and get out there, because the way Winston-Salem works as a southern state is that clergy are often the first point people for that. Yeah. Catherine.
So, my name is Catherine
Thank you.
Asinas, for people on Zoom. I was wondering about the director position. Would they be in charge of the accounting, or there's in payroll?
Great question, thank you. I should have said more about that. So one of our hopes this year is that what we can do is hire a director level finance and operations and actually hire a separate bookkeeper so that the logistics of the bookkeeper are taken off of this more director level administrator. So they would be responsible for overseeing the bookkeeper. And this is maybe getting more in the weeds than folks know, but some of the congregations that we're now in relationship with, because we're more out in the community, namely Green Street United Methodist Church, works with this bookkeeper company that works mostly with churches actually in the area, and they're literally 2 minutes down the road from us. So our finance folks have met with them and would like to be able to explore them as an option of giving us some real stability in our bookkeeping and accounting that would help even as staff might change. Yeah. So that is part of the shift and the increase. Yeah, well, I mean, it's in my dream budget. Let's make it happen. Yeah, yeah, it is in the budget. Any other questions? Any questions from folks online? Okay. I totally feel that. So here's the thing. No one got enough sleep. I have an email address. I respond to emails typically within a week. So if you haven't heard from me, just give it a minute. Trust I'm holding a lot and doing my best. But yeah, if you have questions, feel free to reach out to me. And I think some of you are on the finance committee as well. And yeah. All right. Well, thank you all so much. I appreciate this, and I have said this a bajillion times, but I'm going to say it again. I wish these were not the times that we are in, right? And Susan, I'm sorry. Now you have a question.
Percentage-wise, what is the proposed increase from this year to next year? Do you have a sense? Or Janet?
I'm looking at Janet for that.
She's doing the math.
I'm debating whether to answer that because the stewardship committee's strategy really this year is not to try to get people to increase by a certain percent, but rather to really look deeply at your own financial situation and what the fellowship means to you. And by throwing out a percent, also this budget, it is a dream budget. So it's got a lot of stuff in there, and it's got, so I don't know that that would be fair either to look at.
Yeah.
So
I'm going to take a little big picture step back. I think this congregation has a history of hearing budget numbers and then pledging to meet the budget, which I will say is actually a little atypical from what I've experienced in other congregations. And this will take time because it takes trust, and that's a thing we're working on and building, right? What I have typically experienced is that a pledge drive happens, and from what the pledges raise, the budget then can respond in kind, right? So I am asking us to take a little bit of a leap of faith this year and to say, our faith is so needed, and our congregation is already doing stellar work. I'm so proud of us. And again, gosh darn it. Feeling emotional all the time these days. But I really am so proud of the work we're doing. And I know that really the sky is the limit for what we can do. So what we're trying to say is fund this faith like you believe in it, and we will be good stewards of the money that we raise. And if we raise more money that we can spend this year, we'll just accrue some interest and make really great plans for next year. So really do not be limited. But does that shift make sense, knowing that it will take time? And if you're I'm super stressed about this, just let me see the budget, you can email us. Does that shift make sense? Okay. All right. Any other questions before I try to have a poetic wrap up and sending off? Okay. I really do believe in all of us. We're already doing excellent work, so let's just keep going and let's do more of it. Amen.